If you remember the last training, we talked about why are we here? Why are we here at Lino? And we talked about a couple of ideas that we had in the season of shutdown. And one of them was for the BLN team to go on vacation for 17 weeks. Paid vacation, obviously, because we're pastors and we can't afford an all-inclusive. And for some reason, the leadership team said no. I don't know why. I still can't understand it. But we're here. But really, we talked about the different whys in the room. People talked about serving others. They talked about being able to connect with their same volunteers. We talked about being one campus in this shutdown time. But really, what it comes down to, what it boils down to, the why that we're here at Lino doing a BLN service is because the demand for people to know Christ is far beyond our capacity to reach them. And we know that as we step into this new building, we want to be equipped to reach people for Christ at an even greater capacity than we ever have been before. So we are here to get better so that we can reach more people for Christ. That's why we're doing this training. There's a lot of places all of us could be, but we're here because we're committed to seeing the lost found, to reaching people for Christ. And what I want to talk with you guys about right now is really starting to prepare our minds for getting back into the BLN campus. And I want to answer two questions for all of us that will help us start to think that direction of BLN 2.0, but to also prepare our hearts and really to start filling in the details to getting back into BLN 2.0. All right? So this first question that I want to talk about is, why is BLN more important than ever before? Why is this campus, this building that we call the BLN campus, why is it more important than it ever has been before? And I think for us to really understand the answer to this question, we have to look back at where we've been as a campus and even as a church. And I'm not a history guy. I hated history in school, but this kind of history excites me. And I want to bring you back just real briefly and talk to you guys about the history of our church, Eagle Brook Church. Okay? And it all starts in 1948. Can you believe that? In 1948, this is when Sam and Ethel Hain, they began hosting Sunday school services in their home in White Bear Lake. And they met together with a handful of people, and they had this commitment to reach people for Christ. So the mission of our church, the heartbeat, it didn't start a couple years ago. It didn't start with Bob Merritt. It started in 1948 with a group of people that were committed to reaching people for Christ. And then in 1958, First Baptist outgrew the home of Sam and Ethel, and they started meeting. They purchased a building, which is now known as the Lakeshore Players Theater in White Bear Lake. Have any of you guys been to Lakeshore Players Theater? My wife's acted in that building, so it's pretty crazy to think that it's now a theater. But 1958, First Baptist started holding church services there. In 1972, so 8 years after purchasing the land at Highway 61 and Buffalo Street, which is now where the White Bear Lake campus is, First Baptist, they dedicated a new church building to hosting church services for the White Bear community. So it was just a portion of what we now know as the White Bear campus. In 1991, Bob Merritt was welcomed as the new senior pastor of First Baptist. So that was in 1991. In 1995, First Baptist was renamed Eagle Brook Church. And does anyone know why it was called Eagle Brook Church renamed? No one. Okay. You're going to find out why. So both Eagle and Brook, they have strong ties to Scripture in Isaiah 40:31, but also in Psalm 42:1. And they also refer to the nearby Bald Eagle Lake, okay, right in White Bear, and then the small brook that borders the property of the White Bear campus. So that's how we got Eagle Brook Church, all right? And in 2001, with the White Bear Lake building at capacity each weekend, they began to search for a new location. And then in 2005, this campus that we're sitting in right here, the Lino Lakes campus, it opened its doors in December, and the White Bear Lake campus closed I don't know if any of you know that history of our church, but it's really important because we were not supposed to be a multi-site church. I say we, but the leaders of this church thought that surely Lino would fit everyone that God wanted to bring into Eagle Brook Church. Well, then in 2006, which was actually just a couple months later, the White Bear Lake location, it reopened its doors because everyone couldn't fit here at Lino. I wish I could have been in the room when there was people around the table making a decision to reopen White Bear. And they just spent all this money building this amazing church. And they're like, holy buckets, we underestimated what God wanted to do. That's incredible. But this whole time, they still had this burning desire to see people reach for Christ. All right. 2007, Eagle Brook's third location opened in Spring Lake Park, which was a miracle in itself. And attendance there quickly grew to 1,200 people every single weekend. And that's what really started and energized this new strategy of simulcast technology and really multi-site church. That's where it started in 2007. In 2009, some of you will know this campaign, Not Without You campaign. It launched with a plan to continue the multi-site format for a Blaine location that would be planted in 2010, and then a Woodbury location that would start in 2012. Based on where attendees, they kind of pulled together some reports as to where people were driving from, and they found that Woodbury would be a great spot. But how many of you were a part of the Not Without You campaign? You guys were? Okay, so a couple of you. That's when I just kind of came to Eagle Brook. It was right around that time. All right, in 2010, in October, Eagle Brook's fourth location opened its doors. The Blaine campus was launched, and Woodbury land was purchased for a future site. How many of you were there in October when the Blaine campus opened its doors? 5 of you. That's incredible. You've been here since 2010, and you've seen the Blaine campus grow and grow. So that's some history of Eagle Brook Church, and this is where I want to pause. The story for our church as a whole continues, but I want to dig into Blaine. So in 2010, this campus launched, but then we have some other, so that's what happened in October of 2010. Pen's not working. So Blaine opened. Does anyone know why October 26th, 2014 was significant? Does anyone know what happened on that date? Sunday night service. So that's when we kicked off this 6 p.m. service. All right. And I'm sure you can guess February 14th, 2016, okay, is when the 4 p.m. service kicked off. All of the decisions that led to these dates happening and really the Sunday night services, they were all still centralized around this mission of reaching people for Christ. It wasn't because of someone's brilliant idea and we just love that person that came up with that idea. Actually, some of us dislike them for coming up with that idea. But why we said yes to launching Sunday night services and growing into that style, that strategy of church, is because we wanted to reach more people for Christ. And the Blaine campus was growing. We have been outgrowing that facility since we opened the doors. God just is doing far more than we could have imagined. And we know from what we learned last month that there are roughly 80,000 people within a 10-minute drive of the Blaine campus that don't know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And we want to be a part of changing that number. We want to be a part of seeing those lives changed for eternity. But here's a really cool number that I want to throw out there that we don't often look in this direction. But I ran some numbers and I wanted to take a look at how many people over the last 8 years have we seen pray the prayer of salvation at the Blaine campus alone. And just at Blaine, we have seen 3,842 people, students, kids, pray the prayer of salvation and receive Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. There are churches that would celebrate that number being 8. because the average church in the U.S. sees one salvation per year. This is something that I hope never becomes normal for any of us, because we are in a church where God is moving at an incredible rate, and he's changing marriages, he's changing families, he's changing the relationship between parents and kids, and he is reaching people for Christ and changing their eternity. He's the one who's doing it. We get to be a part of it. And all of our decisions that we make going forward, or all the questions that we answer, are all centralized around our mission as a church, reaching people for Christ. So this number is incredible. I think it's going to grow at a tremendous rate as we double our capacity to reach people for Christ. But looking back at where we've been and answering, kind of looking to that question, why is Blaine more important than ever before? I believe that it is more important because our capacity to be able to reach people for Christ as a campus has never been as large as it will be. We will double our kids' spaces. We'll double our auditorium spaces. We're going to be able to have more students come into the building. I don't know if you know this, but on Wednesday nights for small groups and student ministries, we had kids meeting in closets because we ran out of space. Like, they would meet in the coat closet because we just didn't have room to put them. We have more room, more capacity to see people reach for Christ than ever before. That's why this time is just so important as we go into it. And as we looked at that, and as we were wrestling with, man, we are given this great responsibility as staff, as a church, that God has blessed us to be able to double the size of our church to see people come to Christ. What does this need to look like? And what we started to talk about were really two components that are going to allow us to reach people for Christ at a greater capacity. We were doing 6 services, and we looked at, do we really need to do 6 services now with a 1,500 seat auditorium? And the two components that we thought of were, one, the building. The building is going to allow us to reach more people for Christ. However, the strategy that we really need to look into is our service model, and that strategy that supports how we do services as a church. And so, as we were looking through that, where we landed as the Blaine campus, and this wasn't a decision that was made by one person. It wasn't a decision that was made by one team. The Blaine team didn't make this decision. This is something that we had our leadership team talk about. We had the board look at. We talked to some leaders that were volunteers at the campus. We talked about this for a long time, but where we landed is we are going to step into the new Blaine campus with a 4-service model strategy. Okay, so 4 services would be our model. And the strategy would be, we'd do 1 service on Saturday night at 4 p.m., and then we'd do 2 services on Sunday morning at 9 and 11, and then we'd do 1 service on Sunday night at 4 p.m. Okay, so this is what we're going to launch with as a new campus. And as we were wrestling with this and battling it, some of you might be surprised that we're doing a Sunday night service. And I'll be the first to admit that this was a hard thing for me to talk about. It was hard for me to wrap my mind around, we're building this new campus and we're still going to do services on Saturday and Sunday night. My vote was to do all day Sunday services, and then we could have Saturday off, which is great. But all those people who love Saturday services could just go to another campus and find their home there. But as we dug into it and looking at the history of our church, what has led and compelled decision making is that idea of what would reach the most people for Christ. How can we be most effective at our mission? And the normal 4-service model of 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday morning, it was forcing us to forget about 850 people that we see on average that attend Sunday night services. And some of those people can only attend on Sunday night. And then for us to do all day Sunday we as a church learned that strategy forgets about a group of people, these Saturday attenders that love the campus that they're at and that only attend church on Saturday. We learned about that context of attender about 2 years ago when SLP dropped their Saturday night services. And for those of you that were at Blaine and you were around on Saturday nights, you felt this influx of attenders. And what was happening is that we found that some Eagle Brookers, they see their campus as the service they attend, the service time that they attend. They would say that we go to church, we're Saturday 4 p.m. attenders at Eagle Brook. And depending on what campus that is, it really doesn't matter as much as it matters the time. So for us to completely forget about 900 people that attend on average on Saturday night between those services didn't feel right for us either, because we know that there are people that live in the Blaine community that when they invite their neighbors or their friends, they want to invite them to the Blaine campus, and they would love to bring them on Saturday. So we as a staff, we as the leadership team at Eagle Brook Church, the board decided that it would be best for us to step into this great capacity to reach people for Christ with a model that would allow Blaine attenders to still attend on Saturday, and Sunday night Blaine attenders to still attend on Sunday night. And when we came to this conclusion, it was hard for me. I know I said that earlier, but I want to bring you guys back to about 2 years ago. It was baptism. So I got to think of, okay, yes. So it was 2 years ago. It was right after we had launched this 4 p.m. service. I was the pastor of guest services at the time, and I had to convince these volunteers that served on Sunday night at 6 p.m., who only served for one service, to serve for 2 services, and half of them were like, heck no. So then I had to find another group of people to fill in the gaps so that we could provide this amazing service for attenders that were attending on Sunday night. It was a ton of work. And to kind of fill you in on my family at that time, we had just bought a house. My wife was pregnant with our second kiddo, with Ruby, and I was just drained. And I went into baptism services that July really questioning if this was for me, if ministry was for me, because 6 services on the weekend was a lot, and it might have been too much. And God answered my prayers and really showed me if it was for me, ministry at the Blaine campus at Northwestern out in Lake Johanna. And for whatever reason, I still to this day don't know why I was asking people, because if you've been to a baptism service, you know that 900 people get baptized, and it happens quickly. There's just so many people. But for whatever reason, I stopped every Blaine attender that I helped baptize, and I asked them when they came to Blaine, like, what church service did you come to? And over half of the people that I was baptizing, which was probably about 15 people, said they came on Sunday night. And after about the 3rd or the 4th person, like, tears started to come, and luckily I had sunglasses on and they couldn't see me cry. But then I started to ask after the 5th person, I said, why do you come on Sunday night? Like, why don't you come on Sunday morning? You should come on Sunday morning so we don't have to do Sunday night. And the genuine response of it being, this is the service that works best for my family, or this is the only time I could go to church. I Googled Sunday night church and Blaine showed up. And conviction just came over me, because where my heart was at is what works best for LT and his family and his new kid. And what I should have been asking is, God, you want to reach people for Christ. You want to see this city of Blaine and the surrounding areas that are just growing. You want to see people come here and find something new, a relationship with you. And my heart wasn't there. But after that July baptism, I so wish I could just bottle that experience up for you, because it was energizing, and it was a reminder of why we do what we do as a church. And it's not most convenient at times, and It's not going to be probably the funnest thing to do on a Sunday night sometimes for those of you Sunday night volunteers, but it is what I truly believe God wants to do with our campus for this next season ahead, is to have one service. And there are 2 volunteers that I kept in, well, they're now volunteers, but 2 people I helped baptize that July that I still keep in touch with. And they're both volunteering now on Sunday nights. And God is just moving in their life. And Sunday night church is what works for them. We are the only campus that offers that. And I am thankful that we have a bunch of leaders here at this church that won't pick what's most convenient or what works best, but will pick and make decisions upon what will reach the most people for Christ. Because that is the church I want to be a part of. And I'm so grateful for you and your decision to be a part of that kind of a church as well. Because I know that's what you want too. But for those of you who serve on Sunday night and you're like, yes, I'm so glad we still have Sunday night, I'm so glad you're pumped about it too. And for those of you who are kind of on the fence, I want to challenge you to ask the question, because we will still need you as a church. Will you just ask God, Lord, is this something that we should still be a part of? Before you say no to serving, or you had your heart set on there being no more Sunday night services, but just to ask that question and to see how he responds within you. Because we can't do it without you. We as a staff cannot do it without the amazing volunteers, just like you, that we have at Blaine. So we need your help. That's where we're going as a church. So there are really 2, like I said before, 2 components that are going to help us in this next season with this great capacity. One is the building, and then 2 is the service model that we're choosing to move forward with. But we're left, so the first question we asked, why is Blaine 2.0 more important than ever before? It's because of this great capacity we have to reach people for Christ. It's greater than ever before. But this next question that we're going to dig into is actually going to be in our breakout areas, and we're going to look at how do we do 4 services as a church. So guest services, you're going to go meet with actually Kelly and Jason Roloff. They're going to talk to you about how guest services is going to support a 4-service model. Kids, you're going to go with Holly and to Elevate. Oh my gosh, just you have to look, like Holly's decked out. They're ready for the Glow Olympics. Oh my word. But you're going to go meet and Elevate 4 and 5 and talk about how Kids is going to do 4 services. If you're here and you serve in retail, you can head down to the cafe. And if you're serving in facilities, come find me and I'll go connect you with Kurt. But we're going to dig into how, as different ministries, teams, we do 4 services, this 4-service model, and prepare ourselves for hopping right in at Blaine 2.0. All right? So thank you for being here. We can kind of go ahead and break out, grab snacks. If you want snacks, snacks are important, water, but you can go meet in the cafe for guest services, Elevate 4 and 5 for kids. Thank you.